In the year 2154, wealthy people have abandoned a polluted Earth to live on a giant, magnificent space station called the Elysium. Here they have begun a new society, one free of crime, pollution, and suffering, where resources are abundant, where all work and chores are executed by meticulous robot droids, and any disease or injury can be detected and healed in a matter of seconds by miraculous medbays. A place filled with materialized dreams, where anybody can have whatever they want and look however they want. Although this place may be second only to heaven itself, many on Earth have given up their dream of living on Elysium, believing it to be impossible and unwelcoming of them. However, one boy still holds hope that he will reach this giant ring in the sky. His name is Max DaCosta, an orphaned child who lives in a clustered room with many other poor kids. His life is very grim, and the only inspiration he has comes from staring into the night sky. That is, until one day, a new girl arrives. Her name is Frey. They spend every day from then on together and grow very close. Frey even teaches Max to read, a skill which she taught herself, being a very smart girl. One night, Max shows her a book about Elysium and promises that one day he'll take her there. Believing that they can do anything when they're together, they decide to seal it in ink, Frey and Max, forever. 25 years later, Max is living in a rundown favela in Los Angeles. He gets ready for work and makes his way to the factory. The other locals laugh at him, seeing his pursuit of money as pointless since the Earth is a deserted hellhole anyway. But Max is saving up to buy his ticket to Elysium, although he struggles to survive on his current wage. At the waiting line for the bus, two police robots begin searching the passengers for weapons. When they encounter Max, they identify his extensive criminal record and ask what's in his bag. He jokingly says hair products, but before he can explain, they accuse him of disobedience and assault him, bringing him to the ground before fracturing his arm with a baton. Max goes to the hospital, where he's surprised to see his nurse is Frey. They hadn't seen each other in years since she left the favela, but she returned to LA last month. After she puts his arm in a cast, Max tries to make conversation, but Frey shuts him down, saying she has to get back to work. Max follows her out, telling her that he's sorry he started a life of crime to make ends meet, stating that if he were as smart as her, he would have left too. He begs her to go get a coffee with him, sarcastically threatening to break his other arm if that's what it takes to get her attention. Frey finally gives in and agrees to dinner next Thursday night. Later that morning, Max is summoned to the parole board, completely run by robots. His parole officer says his parole will unfortunately be extended by 8 months for this morning's incident. When Max tries to explain what happened, the officer silences him, saying the officer robots noted violent and antisocial behavior during the encounter, enough to warrant an extension. Max raises his voice, prompting the officer to warn him that abuse of a parole officer is a federal offense. Max leaves, frustrated. He arrives at Armadine Corps, and his supervisor nearly fires him for being late, reminding him that he's lucky to be here. Max enters the factory, where he works at the ground-level building security robots for the Elysium. After putting the parts together, Max takes them to a radiation bay where they are blasted to remove any contaminants before they are shipped. During his shift, Max spots the cutthroat CEO, John Carlyle. He has come to Earth to speed up production to hit quotas so that investors don't lose interest, discussing his next move with the board to meet with the Secretary of Defense to negotiate extending their contract. The Secretary of Defense, Evelyn Delacourt, is currently hosting an event at her base of operations, the Civil Cooperations Bureau. Her evening is disturbed by an alert summoning her to the surveillance office. Here, she is briefed on 3 rogue ships that have breached the atmosphere attempting to board the Elysium. On Earth, a hacker group leader going by the name Spider has his team steal 3 transponder codes so that the ships can go under the radar of the Elysium's defense system. Here, many desperate people line up, paying a fee to board the ships, hoping to gain access to one of the med bays and heal themselves or their loved ones. A woman rushes her crippled daughter to the station so that an ID can be burned onto her arm, allowing her permission to use the device. They board the ship with the rest of the passengers, and all the vessels take off, heading for the Elysium. However, Delacourt is steadily tracking them. Although the Elysium's defense system refuses to engage, unable to identify a target, Delacourt swiftly activates a sleeper agent on Earth, Agent 32 Alpha, otherwise known as Agent Kruger. After receiving the ship's coordinates, Kruger fires 3 missiles, obliterating 2 of the ships, but the skilled pilot of the 3rd ship quickly maneuvers the vessel out of harm's way. He successfully lands on Elysium, and passengers begin pouring out in masses. Immediately, security arrives and apprehends all of the illegal immigrants. The mother quickly breaks into a nearby home and places her daughter on a medbay, which scans her ID and commences the diagnosis, detecting multiple compound fractures in her legs and healing them immediately. Not long after, the girl and her mother are separated. The droids begin to dock all the passengers and ready them for deportation. Delacourt is then summoned to a hearing by President Patel. He is very displeased with her actions. He tells her the matter should have been handled silently and peacefully, citing the 48 casualties that resulted after the missile attack. He reprimands the use of sleeper agents, whom are currently being outlawed due to their psychological predisposition for violence. Agent Kruger, in particular, has committed many horrible assaults of all kinds. Evelyn has an outburst in the middle of the hearing, believing that President Patel is too soft on illegal immigrants. "A message must be sent," she shouts, "that they cannot have our resources or our homes. And, as a mother, she will do whatever she must to protect her kids." Delacourt is dismissed, and Agent Kruger is relieved of his services, after which he also has an outburst. Later, when John Carlyle meets with Delacourt, she inquires how far his control over the Elysium's infrastructure goes, knowing that his company is also responsible for coding the software that runs the Elysium mainframe. She asks if it's possible a new president could be written into the code, allowing this new president control over everything, including the robots.
"Are you suggesting a coup?"
She tells him that once she is president,
your contract's secured for the next 200 years.
They have a deal. Later that day, Max transports another load into the sterilization bay. He struggles to close the door, and his supervisor threatens him to go inside and fix the issue, or he'll find someone who will. Under pressure to meet the daily quota, Max reluctantly enters. He muscles the door free from an obstructive platform, but it immediately closes, commencing the sterilization and blasting him with lethal doses of radiation in the process. His co-workers rush to free him, but it's too late. An extraction bot drags him to a medical examination room. On his way there, Max recalls a memory of his childhood, when he sat with a sister at the orphanage and observed the Elysium. She shoots down his dream of one day reaching there, telling him that the Elysium isn't a place for people like them. He tells her that it's unfair that he doesn't get to experience the Elysium just because of where he is born. She tells him that everyone has a significant purpose for which they are born, no matter where they are born, and so does he. Max awakens to a droid in a medical room, which tells him he has 5 days to live. Until then, he will experience massive organ failure. The droid drops him some pills to help him function normally until D-Day, and then has him sign a release paper. When John returns, he inquires with the supervisor about why production has halted. The soup tells him of Max's accident. John asks that he be released quickly so that they won't have to change the sheets. Max observes the CEO not giving a flying squawk about him, which is his last memory at Armadine. John returns to his office and makes the needed alterations to the code. He then uploads it directly to his brain via a neural link and classifies download of the code as lethal, meaning that if anyone but him were to download it to the Elysium mainframe, it would immediately fry their brain. He then schedules a transport to the Elysium. When Max returns to the favela, he immediately crashes to the ground. His friend, Julio, helps him to his shack, where Max tells him about the accident and that he's going to die. He says the only way to fix this is one of those medical bays on the Elysium. He tells Julio to take him to see Spider. Spider sees Max's desperation as an opportunity. He agrees to get Max on a ship to the Elysium on one condition: he does a job for him that nobody else has the balls to take. He shows Max a neural link device that he wants him to use to steal information from one of those billionaire residents on the Elysium that is currently on Earth. These rich people store all their information, including bank accounts and company records, directly into their brains with these devices. He wants Max to ambush and steal the data from one of them. Max recalls the moment he saw Carlyle and states that he has to be their target. Spider agrees. Since Max is too weak to stand on his feet, Spider supplies him with a first-gen exosuit, which will give him super strength. They burn an ID onto Max's arm and ready him for the exosuit. The process is very brutal, but Max recovers quickly and gets to work. He rides shotgun with Julio while another 2 team members follow behind. They arrive at Carlyle's ship, and Max fires a detonation round into the right side as the ship takes off. When the ship is airborne, Max detonates the projectile, and the ship crashes in a deserted wasteland. A droid emerges and begins shooting at Max and Julio. Max fires powerful air-bursting rounds at the droid, decimating it in a fraction of a second. They make their way to Carlyle, not realizing a second droid is in the ship. When it attacks, one of the team members blindly fires at it, hitting Carlyle in the chest. Max fights the droid one-on-one and eventually rips its head off. They quickly attempt to extract the data from Carlisle's brain and upload it to Max's. Secretary Delacourt has drones surveilling the crash and calls in Agent Kruger for assistance. She tells him this mission is classified confidential, off the books, and he can have whatever he wants. Kruger makes his way to the site with his team, Drake, and Crow. They arrive when the download has just finished. Carlisle dies just as soon as the download completes, leaving Max with the only version of the code that exists. Spider's henchman, Sandro, says that they've encountered a problem. The data is unreadable as it has been scrambled. Max demands he run it again, but Sandro bails. Kruger dispatches some mini-explosive drones, which attach to Sandro's body as he escapes, and blow him to pieces upon detonation. Kruger then attacks Max and eventually gets the upper hand, stabbing him in the abdomen. Julio interrupts the finishing blow, losing his life in the process. This buys Max enough time to slightly recover while reloading his heavy-duty machine gun, challenging Kruger with a burst of powerful rounds. Kruger quickly takes cover behind his shield as Max lays the entire chamber out on him, after which he flees the area. Kruger gets back on his ship and pursues Max. He hides under an old woman's herd of swine, effectively evading the sensors on the ship. Kruger's team dispatches drones to search for him. That day, the doctor tells Frey that they have to discharge her daughter as they are running out of beds for patients. Frey refuses, saying she can't leave her daughter at home to suffer the final stages of leukemia and risk not being around when she has another seizure, but the doctor tells her he can't prolong her stay any further. That night, Max arrives at the hospital and Frey finds him outside. Realizing he's in danger, she takes him back to her home to treat his wounds, where she discovers a tattoo he got from their childhood together. Max wakes up the next morning and grows uncomfortable when he discovers Frey has a daughter, realizing he's now jeopardized both their lives. Frey introduces Max to Matilda and begs him for a favor. She wants him to get Matilda to the Elysium so her leukemia can be cured. She tells him she knows his plan after spotting the ID on his forearm last night, and she says he's her only hope. Max refuses and says that it's too dangerous. A drone spots him exiting her front gate and follows him before he eventually immobilizes it. However, Kruger arrives with his boys at Frey's house and begins interrogating and assaulting her, but she won't budge, even when he promises to help her daughter. Meanwhile, Max arrives at Spider's place, demanding he be put on a ship to the Elysium since he completed the job. Spider has some really bad news. It isn't possible. LA is on strict lockdown, and a no-fly restriction has been placed on the city ever since they attacked Carlisle's ship. He convinces Max to let him take a look at the code he downloaded from Carlisle's brain, as it must be very important for the CCB to have locked down the entire city in search of it, and it may hold the key to lifting the no-fly restriction. After unscrambling the data, Spider discovers the mother of all codes. He tells Max that with this, they can rewrite it and make him a citizen of the Elysium, allowing him to walk right in whenever he wants. But not only him, every single citizen on Earth. Spider has a plan to ambush the Elysium with all the ships at their disposal and hijack the mainframe, uploading the new code. However, Max is dissatisfied to hear it will take Spider's hackers a week to lift the no-fly restriction so that the ships can enter the atmosphere. Max decides that if the code is so important to the CCB, he's going to use it to negotiate a ticket to a medbay on the Elysium. Spider places a tracker on Max's back as he leaves, refusing any of Spider's alternatives. After Kruger kidnaps Frey and Matilda, Crow shows him the code they intercepted in Max's head during the data transfer. Kruger's lust for power grows, and he decides he's going to be the next president of the Elysium. At the same time, they receive a transmission from Max via the drone he took down. He agrees to go with them to the Elysium. He boards their ship, negotiating terms with a live grenade that he threatens not to hesitate to use to blow his brains out. Delacourt lifts the no-fly restriction and Kruger's ship heads for the CCB. Spider's tracker alerts him that Max is leaving Earth's atmosphere, and he immediately kicks his plan into gear, pursuing the ship with his team. Kruger begins making advances towards Frey, monitoring Max's demeanor as he does so, and concluding that he has feelings for her. Kruger realizes Max isn't going to risk Frey and Matilda's lives, so he and Crow attempt to apprehend Max. During the struggle, Max drops the grenade, and it detonates, blowing Kruger's face off. The ship crashes into the front lawn of a mansion on the Elysium. Frey rushes out with her daughter, leaving Max to fight Drake while Crow chases after her. Frey finds a medbay in the home and tries to heal her daughter, but the machine rejects her, unable to scan an ID or find her DNA in its database. Crow eventually finds and subdues her, just as Drake incapacitates Max, with his electrifying new album. Max awakens to a pair of technicians attempting to extract the code from his brain, discussing how they'll dispose his body when they're done. He beats the brakes off the both of them and finds out where Frey and Matilda are being held. Meanwhile, Drake and Crow bring Kruger to a medbay. After confirming that his brain is still intact and functioning, they start the machine, and it commences a facial reconstruction, rebuilding his entire face, including his luscious beard, in seconds. Kruger stares at himself in the mirror, shaken up and growing more unstable by the second. Secretary Delacourt arrives and takes out her frustration on him. His reckless action of crashing the ship almost uncovered her plot and nearly got her arrested for treason. He shatters the mirror and picks up a shard, telling her he's sorry for destroying somebody's lawn before sticking it in her neck. Kruger then welds the latest generation exosuit to his armor and goes hunting for Max. As Crow gets ready to kill Frey and her daughter, Max intercepts and beats him to a pulp, flinging him at Drake in the aftermath. He then blows Drake to pieces with Crow's gun. Max tells Frey to take her daughter and head for a medbay, telling her to trust him that it will work this time. He promises her that they'll see each other again. He heads for the mainframe, where he encounters Spider and his team. One gunman accompanies Frey as another follows Max and Spider. Kruger eventually finds them, making quick work of Spider's henchmen, but Spider and Max escape just in time. Not fast enough, though, as Kruger catches up to them and pulls out his big-ass sword. Max goes toe-to-toe with him on his last leg of strength, while Spider hacks the main door to the central software mainframe, which is the last obstruction in their mission to rewrite the Elysium program. Max fights valiantly, exchanging blows just as devastating as the strikes he is taking, but Kruger's stamina and durability ultimately wins him the fight. Kruger lowers his guard and readies his sword for the execution, allowing Max a window of opportunity for one final play. He lunges at Kruger, ripping the cerebral controller from his head and rendering his exosuit a heavy piece of junk in the process. Max proceeds to beat Kruger to a pulp. With no escape, Kruger pulls the pin on his grenade and interlocks himself to Max. Max, however, refuses to die and rips the cable clean off, throwing Kruger to an explosive death. Spider finally gets the door open, and they rush into the control room, where they gain access to the mainframe. Here, Spider is able to gain complete access to the code and edit it how he desires, granting everybody on Earth citizenship on the Elysium. However, Spider discovers the security lock John Carlyle put on the code. He informs Max that there's no coming back from this. Uploading the code to the program will kill him. Max already knows and has come to terms with it, recalling the conversation the technicians were having while attempting to extract it from him. Spider hands him the controller, giving him the honor of uploading the code himself. Max gets on the line with Frey, sadly informing her that he will have to break his promise. He tells her that his whole life the Elysium looked so beautiful to him, and only now he sees how much more beautiful his home was this entire time. He wishes her and her daughter the best, then presses the button, which immediately kills him. President Patel arrives at the control room with 2 droids and tells them to kill Spider. The entire Elysium space station reboots at that very moment, and when the system comes back online, the droids refuse to execute him, as Spider is now a citizen of the Elysium. Spider tells the president that the Elysium belongs to everybody now. The medbay identifies Matilda as a citizen and heals her body's cancer cells in a few seconds. At the very conclusion of our story, the system identifies every single citizen on Earth that is in need of medical attention and makes them high priority. The droids and shuttles then begin delivering aid and medbays to Earth, healing the global population.